Okay, hello. So, how are you? So, today we'll be looking at topic 7. Mm. Yeah, we'll be looking at topic 7 for advanced class, and the topic is there have been series of discussions about North and South Koreans possibly unification. Do you think this will happen? If so, when? And what are the benefits and drawbacks of unifying and staying separated? Okay, that's the topic. So, based on this topic, you and I know that with this current government, before the inception of coronavirus, has had a long talk with the North Korean president about reunification. Reunification or reunifying means Korean coming back together as one. Okay, and of course, as a Korean person, you know a little bit more of the history. So here's what we did in the class. First, we found out the reasons conflict for conflict. We found out the reasons for the conflict between the two countries, and next we looked at the drawbacks of reunification, coming back together, and also we also examined the benefits of coming back together as one country. Okay, that's virtually what we did in class. And then remember, in our previous lesson, actually in I think unit 5, we talked about conflict. All right, we talked about conflict, and what did we say conflict was? We said conflict is simply a disagreement between two people or two countries within a protracted period of time. And we were also meant to understand that protracted period of time means a long period of time. So basically, conflict is a disagreement or a fight between two countries in a long period of time. So, with that, we can all agree that the North Korea and South Koreans war, or the fight, or the misunderstanding, or the disagreement that has existed between these two countries has lasted for a very long period of time, right? So we must say that. And so meaning that it's been a conflict between the two nations, okay? So that's why the first thing we have to examine for the topic is to know the reasons for the conflict. Why? Why do we have to know the reasons for the conflict? If I walk into the classroom and you are fighting with your best friend, and then I walk in to mediate, to solve the conflict or to solve the fight between you and your friend, and I just walk in and I say, stop fighting, become friends. Can it work out? No, it can't work out like that. Life is not like that. It doesn't work like that. So if I walk in between or in the midst of two friends fighting, I have to listen to the reasons for the fight. I have to listen the A, from the A. I have to hear her part of the story, and I have to listen to the B. I have to also hear her part of the story. So when I hear these two people's part of stories, I can actually give A some blames, or probably tell A, you didn't do it right, you should have just apologized, and also tell B, you weren't so patient to accept the apologies. So in solving conflict, we must first of all find out the reasons for the conflict. Now, if we find the reason for the conflict, it's going to be very easy to solve conflict. So that's why we are finding out what is the reason that caused the conflict between the North and the South. So, and that reason was not fair-fetched. And what we did was to look at sample opinions from the classes, all right? And then we got to understand that the reason between the conflict between the reason that caused the conflict between the North and the South was simply because there was different political opinion and ideology targeted by Russians, or who in turn who pushed the North Koreans to accept communism, and the U.S. who pushed or influenced the South Koreans to accept democracy. Okay, so now we found out the reason. So the reason was not because the Korean Peninsula, the North and South, really wanted to fight. No, that was not the reason. The reason was because of external influence. Okay, and that external influence was from the Russians and from the United States. All right, so they saw a loophole between the two countries, and they took advantage of that. All right, so meaning the Russians pushed the North to accept communism, whereas the Americans pushed the South to accept democracy, which is political views. Okay, so with this, that was where the war broke out between the two countries, you know, and the Russians, with alliance with China, you know, supported the North, whereas the U.S. together with the U.K. and part of Japan supported the South. Okay, so now we found out what the real problem is. So finding out the real problem, the next thing we're going to be looking at is what are the drawbacks. So first, let's take a look at the drawbacks. One of the drawbacks we face if we have to reunite or bring back South Korea and North Korea together is reunifying of political opinion. Now, what is reunifying of political opinion? Remember, already for the past 50 years, there has been a different political opinion. The North believing in communism or practicing communism or communist system of government, whereas the South practicing democracy. So if we have to come back together, what system of government do we have to practice? Are we going to abandon communism for democracy, or are we going to abandon democracy for communism? So that's a big question. So one of the drawbacks to come back together as one country is reunifying political opinion. And then that being said, not just that, are the US ready to give up and say, okay, South, you can decide to join the North and practice communism? And also, is the Soviet Union or the Russians, together with the Chinese, are they ready to say to the North, okay, well, you're free, you can join the South and practice democracy? So that's a big problem. So reunifying the political opinion is one of the drawbacks that we're going to fix if we want to come back together. The next drawback is huge gap between the rich and the poor. Huge gap between the rich and the poor. Of course, you know that the North are not as rich as the South. In fact, the per capita income of the North Korean is way less, smaller than the per capita income of the South Korean person working. So that gap, breaking into that gap, is another drawback we're going to look at. And South Korean people are so worried about this because they are so worried because they have to spend a huge amount of money for the economic balance, to balance out the economy of the North and the South. It means that the South Korean person has to give up a huge amount of money or pay into the government a huge amount of money to bring to standard, to raise the per capita standard of the North Korean. And of course, you know that everyone is always very greedy, especially with money. I'm not sure South Koreans would accept to trade in that huge amount of money for the reunification. So that's second drawback we're going to look at. So that being said, let's now take a look at the benefits of reunifying or coming back together. One, the first benefit is developing and extracting more material or more natural mineral resources from the North. Of course, it's the registered fact that the North has a lot of mineral resources, whereas on the other hand, the counterpart of the North, which is the South Korea, has zero mineral resources. So there's no natural resources existing anywhere in the South. But in the North, there are a lot of mineral resources. So if there's a reunification, the South Koreans can take advantage of that and harness or extract these mineral resources and turn it to great wealth. Okay, so meaning that South Korea have to commit a huge amount of money to extract or mine these mineral resources in order to turn it to wealth, to money. All right, so that's one of the benefits. And then another benefit is population balance. Over the years, it's been known that the South Korean population has been going down and down the drain. All right, why? Because a lot of young people in South Korea don't want to get married. They are all pursuing careers and they are all chasing after money. So most Korean people don't get married, and even those of them that got married don't want to have children. They don't think having children is necessary. So that's the second problem. So that's another problem with the South. Whereas on the other hand, in the North, there are huge families. Okay, they don't worry about that. There's a huge population increase in the North. So if there's a reunification, one of the benefits is that the population of the North will merge up together with the population of the South, and there will be no longer population deficiency. So there will be balance in the population. Okay, that's another very big benefit. And then the next benefit is what we call family reunion. Family reunion is a system whereby before the war, you know that there are so many families. Korea was just Korean peninsula. Okay, there was no North, there was no South. There was no dividing of these two countries. And during the division, some South Koreans moved to the North, those who supported communism, and some North Koreans left the North and joined the South. So, in other words, a lot of families have divided for a long period of time. Alright? So if there is a reunification, it means that families can reunite after so many years, after 60 or 70 years of this conflict. So that's a very good benefit. And then the next is joint cultural diversity. Of course, there was one culture before, but now the language has changed. So the long period of division, the language has changed, and the cultures also have changed and evolved. So if there's reunification, there will be joint cultural diversity between the two countries. And the next is decrease national defense expenditure and eliminate conscription. What is that? Decrease national expenditure, defense expenditure. South Koreans have been spending so much money in keeping the U.S. military, to be overseeing the protection of the South. And whereas on the other hand, I also know that the North Koreans are also spending either in cash or in kind or in their resources, to Russians and the Chinese to keep up with making of biological weapons and all of that. So to keep their nations. So if there's a reunification, there won't be necessary, there won't be need for that. So it means that the South Koreans are going to tell the US, you can go back, we are free. There's no war existing between the two nations anymore. So in other words, the South Korean government can save huge amount of money that have been spent for over so many years in keeping the US military and US fire and US soldiers in South Korea. Whereas in the North, the same thing would happen. So if they've been paying with their natural resources, all of those things will be cut out. So the North also is going to be free. So there will be free national defense expenditure, less spending in the national defense. And also, the next one is elimination of conscription. What is conscription? Conscription is simply what we call the forceful or the compulsory military service of Korean young men. Okay, so in South Korea, every young Korean man is made to go for military service at the age of 20. why they have to equip themselves for against war, just in case war breaks out. So that has been a huge problem over the years because a lot of Korean men think conscription is not necessary, and they also see it as a very big burden, and they see it as also as a setback because they have to leave university to go for conscription, and it's compulsory. You must do it. If you don't do it, you don't get a job in Korea as a Korean national. So these are many more the reason why a lot of youth said they don't want to go for conscription. But the government is putting mandatory conscription in order to train the youth on how to shoot guns and how to equip and exercise and fight war just in case that a war break out between the north and the south. However, the women are excluded from conscription in South Korea, but in the north, both the male and women go for military, are allowed to join the military. Okay? So if there's a unity between the two countries, there won't be any need for the South Koreans to go for military service. And then the next is easy travel by land and port to Europe. Okay, so after the division and boundary separation between the South and the North, South Korea is only surrounded by sea and ocean. So there's no way you can get out of South Korea without you are either diving and swimming into the sea or you're using the airplane. There is no other way. So, but if the two countries, whereas in the North has a boundary with Europe, okay, and Russia. So, whereas in the North, if there's a unity, that means people can freely travel from the North and go to Europe. They don't need to use airplane or use, the sea and all of that. So this is also one of the benefits of reunifying. And I hope for the biggest benefit is that if the two countries come back together, there will be great joint force. Why? South Korea over the years has developed so much in technology, science, technology, innovations, and all whatnot. And the North also has been known for making biological weapons. So if the two countries join together, their military joins together, they might be clamoring to be one of the biggest world king, and I don't think the Americans want that. I also don't think that the Russians want that. So that's a big benefit for reunification. However, let's take a look at a few vocabularies of that. The first one is politics. And we were made to know that politics is activities associated with the government of a country, especially the debate or conflict among parties hoping to achieve power. That's what politics is. And then on the other hand, reunion means an instance of two or more people coming back together after a long separation, after a long period of separation. And the next is war. What is war? War is the state of armed conflict between two nations or two states. Armed conflict means the military war, or though the armed conflict includes the military, the air force, the naval force, which is the submarines, the air force, those that fly the helicopter, and the military on the land with the gun. So that's what war is. When there's a conflict that involves them fighting with, or maybe probably the use of the biological weapons, like some of these countries do. And then the next is border. Border is a line, it's a thin line separating two political countries. And the last is history. History is the study of a past event, particularly in human affairs. So now let's take a look at the warm-up question. The warm-up question is, do you know any North Koreans? That's the question you have to answer, okay, by yourself. And the second one is, how do you feel about families that split? I feel very sad about that. I don't know any North Koreans, but I feel very sad about families that have split for a long period of time. I mean, I can't imagine staying away from my family for 50 years. At 50, what I am today, maybe I'll be far over 90 or 80 something. So that's a long period of time for families to stay apart. And then, yeah, that's what this topic is all about. So, do you think that it is possible, with all the drawbacks and benefits of unity, do you think it's possible that Koreans will reunify? Thank you, and I'll see you in class.